Welcome to another exciting episode of Beyond Focus TV. I'm your host, Lydia Patel, and as always, we have another exciting guest for you, Sylvia Kinard, who's running for the 40th District Council. She's coming up next, so stay with us for the next 30 minutes. Welcome back. I'm Lydia Patel. You're watching Beyond Focus TV, and I want to introduce my lovely guest this evening, Sylvia Kinard. How are you this evening?
Great, Lydia. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here and to speak to your viewers and to also, just have an opportunity to talk about why I'm running.
Absolutely. We're going to get to know you as the person, Sylvia, because there's so much going on and you've dabbled in so many different things to get you to this point. Yeah. Why don't we talk about your legal career and getting you to where you are right now?
Okay. Well, I went to New York Law School. I went to Seton Hall University as a scholarship recipient. I was an MLK scholar. And from there, I went to New York Law School, where I focused on litigation and real estate development. From there, my first job out of law school was actually working for the city council. So I was a senior legislative attorney for the city council for a number of years. And from there, I went into the private sector. And then from there, I went into the state, where I developed affordable housing as assistant commissioner and deputy counsel for the State Division of Housing. So that's pretty much how I got started in government and where my legal career kind of led me along the path that I'm on today.
Now, seeing that you've done both the private and the public sector, for you, which do you prefer? And I know they have their differences. So for you, which moments did you enjoy best of each?
I think that's a better way to put it, because I think I enjoyed both. I think what I liked most about working in the public sector, particularly for the city council and for the State Division of Housing, was that you're able to impact on people's lives. I think one of the things people don't really understand is that it does matter who's in these offices, and that these people are making decisions that affect every aspect of your life. And so a lot of times people say, oh, I can't stand these politicians, I don't like government. But the reality of the situation is that these people are impacting what you eat. If you look at Mayor Bloomberg recently with the 16-ounce sodas, right? They impact on what you eat, how you dress, how your children are educated, how much money you keep in your bank account in terms of the minimum wage, the tax. So all this stuff is extremely important and it impacts on every aspect of your life. And so I think that aspect of it I really enjoyed, really making a difference in people's life. And obviously in the public sector, in the private sector, you get to do, I was a transactional attorney, so I put together a lot of deals, and I enjoyed that. So.
Well, that's really great, and especially with the housing background, having left that and seeing how the housing situation now is with rents being raised and a lot of people not even being able to afford affordable housing. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it's criminal. I think one of the things that I want to do as a city council person from the 40th district is to really look at how we're taking taxes and using that to subsidize developments. If you look at what the Barclays Center, I love Barclays and Beyonce was great and all of that. However, they have over $100 million and plus in both city and state subsidies. okay, for the Barclays Center, and that's owned by a private individual and a consortium of people. We need to really look at how we're spending our tax dollars. I'd like to see more of our development dollars go not for these high-end projects, but for basic affordable housing. What you see now in Brooklyn now the average median rent in Brooklyn is $3,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. That's crazy.
Yes.
One-bedroom apartment. Most people have like 3, 4 kids. They're married or they have a significant other, and their wages have been stagnant for the last 5 years. How are people affording that? They're not. They're doubling up, or they're staying at home with their parents, or they're sharing spaces or cutting up spaces. That's really not, I don't think that's the way we want to go forward in New York.
Quality of life.
It's quality of life, exactly. So one of the things I really want to do is to tap into my housing background to really look at how we are developing housing. We need to increase the housing stock. We have to have more apartment units available for people who are middle income, working class, and low income families. Right now we have a deficit there, and we've got to change that.
Absolutely. So let's get into your life in politics a little bit.
Okay.
When did this all get started after you finished coming out the public center?
Well, I guess I was a volunteer coordinator on a Manhattan Borough President race, and I've worked with a number of campaigns over the years. I've been an advisor for a number of campaigns over the year. My first actual running for office is when I ran for the Community School Board 13.
Okay.
And I ran as an independent. And so that is my prior experience. I ran for Congress last year in the 9th District. So that was an opportunity to really start to think about talking about some of the issues that I thought was so important that I had worked on, both as a lawyer and as a minister at my church. And so there was a number of issues that I thought were very important and critical that were not being addressed, and I felt that it was important for me to stand up. There comes a time you have to, you can't talk about what other people are doing. You have to look at yourself.
Absolutely.
And so this was a time when I felt like, I've got some skills. I've been part of this community. I grew up in this neighborhood. I went to Erasmus High School. My dad and my grandfather started a church in Flatbush. So I really felt it was time to get up and to do something. So.
And then here we are.
Here we are, and I'm talking to you and meeting so many nice people like you.
And it's been a great ride.
It's been a great ride. I mean, it's challenging. I mean, when you get up and you say, I'm going to be a leader, that's, you put yourself out there and you get criticism for a lot of different reasons. And I can't say I got criticism on the level that Mr. Weiner and Mr. Spitzer are getting, but I am you do get criticized. It's like, why do you want to do this? And who do you think you are? And you hear the comments, and you really have to say, well, I'm doing this for the right reason. I'm doing this because I think I can help people. I'm doing this because I think people are not being served by the kind of leadership we have existing. We need a change. There's definitely a need for a change.
Absolutely. And for those who don't know, what is the 40th District? Where does that cover in Brooklyn?
Oh, my goodness. The 40th is a great neighborhood. It covers Flatbush, Ditmas Park, Lefferts Gardens, a little bit of Crown Heights, and Kensington. So it's a very diverse area. You have everything from Victorian mansions in the 40th District to, apartments. Buildings. We have one of the highest concentration of apartments in Brooklyn, and that's been a real issue for us because you have a situation where there's a lot of gentrification.
Yes.
Because we sit right in the middle of Prospect Park.
Absolutely.
We kind of surround it. Ditmas Park is on one side, Flatbush is on the other side, Kensington is behind the park, and the park is prime time. So there's a lot of gentrification. A lot of people are having their rents illegally raised. They're having a hard time really being able to defend in the housing court. I've represented people in housing court. It's a tough thing when you get out there, when you get in.
It is.
Into that. It's almost like a vortex. Once you get swept into that tornado, it's very hard to pull yourself out. And so you have a lot of people who are not able to really defend themselves, and so they find themselves either having to pay these illegal rents, because if under the rent stabilization law, you can only raise a person's rent a certain amount of increments over a certain period of time. And so you have a situation where a landlord might illegally raise the rents higher than they're legally allowed to, but now the tenant's got to fight that. And the resources, that's hard. You've got a lot of elders, a lot of people who've been in these apartments for a long period of time. You've got a lot of senior citizens who are in apartments. They're paying below market rate. Landlords want them out. So what do they start doing? Neglecting services, So now you don't have heat, now you don't have water, or you have electricity is a little funny. These kinds of things are going on. So we need people who are going to really stand up and say there's got to be some parity. One of the things I really want to see is economic justice in this city. It can't just be all for the 1%. We really have got to balance how we're doing things, and we're not balanced right now.
Well, hold that thought. We're going to get to that balance coming up in just a little bit. You're watching Beyond Focus TV. We'll be right back with Sylvia. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond Focus TV. I'm Lydia Patel, and as you saw in the first segment, I'm here with my lovely guest, Sylvia Kinard. We're going to get straight into the campaign because it is a better Brooklyn for everyone. That is the slogan.
That's my slogan.
I love it, slogan.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
How did you come up with that?
I think that captures where I want to go. Because what I'm seeing happening, as I said again, one of my big themes is economic justice and parity, is that we see a lot of money being spent on certain things, not enough on other things. We looked at a couple days ago about the scores that came out with the kids.
Yes.
Now, they've known for 3 years that they were going to move towards this. The teachers have not had a contract for the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. So this is a disconnect. So how are we going to get the kids ready, and we don't have teachers with a contract? We're not putting enough money into the educational system. So a better Brooklyn for everyone means that we can't just have luxury condominiums on the waterfront downtown Brooklyn and Dumbo and other places. That's great. I don't knock it. But we can't just have all of that. We've got to have, it's got to be better for everyone.
Everyone.
And that's really my focal point. It's about how are we spending our money? How are we spending our tax dollars? You know, I always make the comparison. It's like if you have a certain amount of money as a family, and let's say, for example, somebody wants the flat screen TV, but you only have money for the TV with the rabbit ears. Well, you don't neglect and not pay your rent because you want a flat screen TV, unless you're very irresponsible. But in a lot of ways, that's how we are in government. We only have money for a TV with rabbit ears, but we say, oh, well, we'll buy it on credit. We'll get the big 90-inch television set, you know. And that's what some of these development projects are like. We just can't afford some of that. We're going to have to put that on hold. And that's not to say we shouldn't develop the waterfront in Brooklyn. I think that's great. I love being by the water. But I think it's irresponsible to say you're going to put all this money in high-rise developments in Red Hook and Williamsburg and all these other places, and then we have a situation where we can't pay our firemen, we can't pay our police, we certainly are not paying our teacher, and our children are suffering. We are not creating jobs. We have so many people who are out of work or underworked. You know, they're working 2 and 3 jobs because they cannot make enough on one job to pay these $3,000 a month rents. So this is a problem. So I think that's what I mean by a better Brooklyn for everyone. That's that it can't just be better for just a few people in Brooklyn. It's got to be better across the board.
What's your take about the hospitals? There's a lot of hospitals being taken and closed down. It's so upsetting because a lot of those, let's say, typical hospitals that are more in the hood, they seem to be closing them down. And they didn't make the top list, and there's so many different things like that. Why don't you touch upon that?
Well, my mother was a dialysis patient at Long Island College Hospital for years. She had a stroke 15 years ago, and one of the results of that is that she had kidney failure, and so she would take dialysis at Long Island College Hospital 3 days a week. So I'm very familiar with the doctors there, the programs there, and I think you've got to have ambulatory care. You've got to have critical care in the neighborhoods that people live in. Any doctor will tell you, any emergency doctor will tell you, it matters how quickly you get to the hospital.
Yes.
One of the things that we're seeing, because they've already started to turn people away at Long Island College Hospital, is that they're taking their ambulatory emergency care to Methodist Hospital on 8th Avenue in Park Slope. And they already are overbooked there. The emergency room doctors and nursing personnel at Methodist Hospital in Park Slope are already saying, we can't handle the load. So they will tell you, if you are not breathing, if you have a heart attack, if you have a stroke, you need to be getting to a emergency room facility within 3 to 4 minutes if you're not going to have brain damage or you're going to have any possibility of survival. This is life and death. So we're going to have to figure this out. We're going to have to do something.
Because they're just continuing to reduce the numbers, close them down, and just making an impact. So that's something that, of course, will come up, you know, even on a smaller political level, that's going to affect it all the way on a chain going up.
Well, it is. I think one of the things that we and this is a policy issue, so I don't want to make it too complicated for people, but one of the things that has happened is that over the last 20, 30 years, we've moved from a medical model of medicine to a business model of medicine. And once you move from a medical model, meaning that I've got to take care of you, the Hippocratic Oath, you know, do no harm, I've got to make sure that you're cared for because that's my responsibility as a doctor to take care of you. We moved from a medical model when we started to get into the HMOs. If you remember when the HMOs first hit the scene in the 80s, that's when you started seeing this shift. And we haven't recovered. We still haven't figured out how to provide care under this business model, because just care for people. That's why they want to close the hospitals, because we're moving from a critical care, which is what hospitals are for, to more preventive care. But in the meantime, there's a lot of people who have critical care needs. So this is the dichotomy we've got to wrestle with. But that's a policy issue. But I think people have got to begin to demand it matters. My family needs to be treated. My mother needs to be treated. My children need to be treated.
Absolutely.
That this is a medical issue. This is a rights issue. I think those are some of the things that I'd like to talk about as the council person from the 40th District.
And as council person, wanted to hear what is your thoughts on stop and frisk?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, I definitely am against any policy that invades on the civil rights as an attorney of any individual. I think that we've got to really begin to look at how we're profiling and creating a culture where our young men have no self-perception of themselves other than I am a problem. And what stop and frisk does, it says I am a problem because I exist. And so we've got to figure out how we're going to move from legitimate police needs, because I talk to people who live in the projects and they're mostly people of color. They're terrified. They're terrified. Yes. You've got older people. You've got families. These are kids who are getting shot because they're in the playground and Marcy projects or Lefferts projects because they're there. These are people of color. So we've got to figure out how do we have this conversation and begin to address the issue, the legitimate need for safety, because people have to be safe. I don't want to walk down the street with my child in her baby carriage and she ends up shot. I mean, I can't even imagine. There's so many parents that have had that. That's their testimony. That's not a testimony anybody should have. So we've got to move past that. But we also have got to deal with things in a way that does not stigmatize our young men so they feel like I'm a problem just because I walk out of my house. Now, that said, we've also got to look at what are we doing with our young men, because they have to have something to do. You can't have 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old boys hanging in the street with nothing to do all day. Okay, that's a recipe for disaster.
Sure is.
So we've got to really start thinking about apprenticeship programs. We've got to think about what they were supposed to do at Barclays was apprenticeship programs to give people a track to get into the unions, these construction union jobs. They never did that. So these are the kinds of things we really have got to, and that's one of the things I want to talk about. But I think
well, we'll do that. Well, coming up next, I want to just before we wrap up, we'll get a final word with you. What are you looking forward to do? What are you bringing to the table? That's all coming up next. You're watching Beyond Focus TV. Back, you're watching Beyond Focus TV. Almost done our conversation here.
Oh no!
But you know what? We still have another segment left. We're getting straight into it.
Okay.
I want to know, what exactly are you bringing to this campaign? It's such a tight race. A lot of people are going for it. But what do you particularly want the people at home to know about you running for 40th Council District?
Well, I think, as I said before, I think I'm actually the only candidate in the race who's actually developed affordable housing throughout the state. So I bring that level of expertise. We have got to increase the supply of housing in this city. There is a less than 3% vacancy rate. And so what that means is that it drives the pricing up. So what that means is that we've got to increase the supply. The demand is there, the supply is not there. So that's number one. So I understand how to do that. I've done that with churches all throughout the city. I've developed faith-based housing. So that's one of my levels of expertise. The other thing I bring to the table is that I'm a mom. I'm a single mom. So there's a lot of women out there who are single parents. I understand what you're doing.
And they can relate to you.
Yeah, well, I understand what their issues are. I have child care issues. Sometimes I have to go out and work, and I'm like, good grief, I don't have anybody to take care of my baby. You know, well, she's not such a baby, but she still needs someone to watch her in the evenings. But this is an issue. So affordable child care, daycare. You know, we've got to improve universal kindergarten from K through 3. That is the most important thing. Speaker Quinn came out, and this is not an endorsement, but I just want to make it a point. She came out a couple of days ago talking about they were going to figure out a way to give parents loans so that they could afford daycare for their children. Now, how expensive is it that we've got to start thinking about getting parents loans so they can put their kid in daycare? But the other piece of that is that people are recognizing that if I don't start tracking my kid early and putting them in enrichment programs and putting them in good schools early, they're not going to make it with this Common Core thing. Because that Common Core is not going away. Because we've moved to a technologically based society. There's no manufacturing, there's no industrial jobs, and it's almost survival of the fittest. You know?
Really?
And so we've got have to think about how we're investing for our kids. And so for her to come out to as an inducement to middle class families to say, like, I understand, I'm going to give you. What are we saying in our communities of color? We're not even having that conversation. So we've got to have that conversation about what are we doing with our little kids so that when they get 14, 15, and 16, they have some sense of where they want to go, who they want to be. And so those are some of the things I think I bring to the table that are enhance and will make the 40th district better for everyone. I want to do a web page just for kids so that children, our district is one of the most diverse districts in Brooklyn. We keep talking about we want kids to be ready for this global economy. Okay, well, global starts in Brooklyn. You've got everybody in Brooklyn. Every language is spoken in Brooklyn. But there's very little interconnection with people. So one of the things I want to do is, even starting with the kids, on my council website, to have a page where kids can upload and can share information so that kids can even start to get to know kids from other cultures here. We don't do that. We don't mix and mingle. So we've got to figure out, how do we do that? How do we begin to really bring people together so we can realize, how do we make this society better for everyone? And so that people don't feel like they're competing with each other, but they can cooperate with each other. That's what I think I want to do.
Very good. Now, this is your information card.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've been seeing these around the 40th district.
All over the place.
These are all over. Why don't you share some of the information on it?
Sure.
Tell us about it.
Okay. Well, essentially, it'll give you a little bit of my platform on education reform, job creation, health care, and tenants' rights in housing. Those are my really big issues. We definitely need volunteers. We're coming up on the Democratic primaries in like 4 weeks.
September 10th?
Yeah, September 10th. Vote. Sylvia, Kinard, for the 40th district. But what I want to share with you is that if you want to volunteer, you know, this is going to be one of the biggest turnovers in the city's history. Yes. We're getting a new mayor. We're getting a new controller. We're getting a new public advocate. We're getting new borough presidents. We're getting almost 3/4 of the city council are going to be replaced. This is unprecedented.
It's a huge year.
New district attorney maybe in Brooklyn. All over. It's just huge. So this is a big year. If you want to get involved, there's no better time to learn the electoral process, to get involved and to volunteer. We certainly would love to have you on our campaign. You can go on our website, sylviakinard.nationbuilder.com. That's sylviakinard.nationbuilder.com. You can email me at sylvia.gale.kinard@gmail.com, or you can call us at 718-564 7285. That's 718-564-7285. And we'd love to have you. There's so many exciting things you can do and get involved.
And what are some of the roles as a volunteer that, just so people could have an idea, they may not be like, oh, maybe I can't do that?
Everybody can give out brochures at a subway stop. You can sit on a chair. That's from the seniors to the old, to the youngest to the old. So you can give out brochures in your building. You can give out brochures on your block. You can make phone calls for us. So there's a number of things you can do as a volunteer.
Of course, because some people tend to shy away. Oh, I don't know the computer. I don't know how to do this.
No,
and I'm like, no, you can definitely still get involved. We welcome everybody, right?
Yeah, yes. We have something for everybody. We're equal opportunity employers.
Very, very good. Now, before I let you go, because you know it's summertime here in Brooklyn, and it's a hot time, and you know people are driving and texting.
Oh my goodness!
They just raised the fees, everybody.
Yeah.
So do make sure not to get caught doing that, because they're taking away points.
Yeah.
And you got to pay a hefty fine. Any quick words on that?
I think the fine is the least of it. I think that the issue with texting and driving is really an issue of life and death, or maiming someone. And I can't imagine that there's any. If you are doing it, I know it's tempting. Sometimes I get a call, I will pull my car over. It is just not worth killing someone, maiming someone, having to live with that guilt, possibly going to jail. So please, really, seriously, I think to stop, and particularly the young drivers, the young teen drivers, the new drivers, just think about what you're doing.
We see a lot of people bowing their heads, but it's not for prayer.
It's not for prayer.
It's not for prayer.
Don't do it. It's just, you see the stories, and they're just tragic, and you think that, and when you look at what people are texting, I'm on my way, I'll be there in 5 minutes, and you've hit somebody's child. Yeah, you've hit somebody's child. Please, it's not worth it.
Well, you're a complete package. I love it. You're a wonderful candidate for this. And on September 10th, that's the big day. Everybody gets to come out. So if you're seeing these around, once again, check them out. Sylvia Kinard, it was an absolute pleasure to have you with us on Beyond Focus TV. Till next week, we'll be right back with more. You're watching Beyond Focus TV. Have a great evening.